Hi everyone, this is Boonie. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been probably over a year since I've been more consistent making videos, but I'm here again. I wanted to start by changing a little bit of my content to focus more on interviewing mental healthers, people in the community, and sharing more insight and access to resources. And I think the best way to do this is by having conversation, because perspective is how we share our worlds and how people feel like we're not the only ones going through these things. So please I'm here to introduce my new colleague, Sean, and he's going to share a little bit about his work. And we're going to start talking about rage rooms and anger.
Well, first off, thank you for having me. This is really interesting. I've never been on a thing like this before. I don't even know how to describe it. Channel. I'm sorry, YouTube channel. But yeah, my name's Sean. A little bit about myself. I'm actually a substance abuse counselor. I am based in Baltimore, Maryland. Um, and I work for a program called Peaceful Minds Health Services. I'm the lead counselor there, and I've been in this line of work for about 8 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry.
what made you go into this pathway? Because 8 years is a pretty long time.
Yeah. Out of college, I actually started working first in methadone maintenance, and I worked in that for about 7 years. No, I'm lying. I've been doing this for about 10 years. I've been working in methadone maintenance for about seven. My fault. But what made me get into it? Honestly, my family. Just well, we're in 2024 now, but in 2022, I went to about two or three two or three different funerals just off of overdoses in my own personal family. I'm not sure if it's a big concern over there on the West Coast, but like fentanyl is like a really big thing over here. And um, people, both of my relatives passed away from fentanyl overdoses. So I don't know, like it kind of fit. As I was mentioning to you before, I was a computer science major when I first initially got into college, but um, I don't know. I guess just seeing my family, the dynamic there, and just being a Baltimore and Maryland native, it's needed.
Yeah, you feel that call, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's natural. It's like, well, this is happening. What do I do something about it, right?
Right, 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 right.
Mhm. I love that. And we've been, well, I've been lurking in this Discord. I've been lurking not just you, but everyone in the chat. So I'm a just very observant person. And so I've been seeing how people are talking about certain things and important concerns in their lives. And someone actually tagged you and said you were like the resident mental health. I'm like, ooh, who is this? And so I started trying to like look at your stream sometimes and see what you post about. And so I've just been very curious and trying to gain relationship, not trying to lurk and be like, talk to me, please. But maybe I do that sometimes, but becoming more of an extrovert lately. So I wanted to hear more about, because did something about an anger and what was it called, a rage room? I
Yes.
I've never done it before, but I've heard people in my life want to try it, and I was just
Hmm.
want to curious, like, what was it like to do it? And then so curious too if you have this possible perspective about the intersection between men's mental wellness related to expression of anger too.
Got you. Okay. With well, as you know, treatment is always individualized. Some people come in, um, like I said before, I'm more so focused on the substance abuse piece,
Mm.
but I do have it's kind of impossible at this point. When I was in college and because my undergraduate is in applied psychology, they gave us like a track. They were like, "Do you want to go more mental health or do you want to go more substance abuse?" And I honestly gave it a try because, like I mentioned before, my major wasn't anything revolving around this at all. So I was curious. So I tried out both. Um, Mental health, my hat goes off to you guys because that is very, excuse me. It takes a very special person to work with individuals strictly with that. I
Yeah.
do think both are needed.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, I tried really hard to get away from it. But more often than not, a lot of the individuals that come into our care are they do have co-occurring disorders. And it's very hard to separate. It's like one of those situations with like what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, did this person's substance use become exacerbated because of their mental health, or is it the reverse? So I mean, like it was just really kind of one of those things where I fought my hardest, but I still face it every day. Which, I think every good on both sides. I think any practitioner should, you know, at least be abreast with certain things and stuff because again, it's one of those things you can't escape.
Hmm.
So, I say all that to say that I talk to a lot of people about anger sometimes because that's one of the things that might be an issue as far as like things that they want to change on their treatment plan. Um, and one of the first things that I usually ask an individual is, do you think that anger is a bad thing? And naturally, people are kind of like, well, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't be angry. Like, angry people are mean. And it's kind of like, well, how do you handle that anger? Which kind of segues into what you were just asking me as far as like the rage room and stuff.
Hmm.
Rage rooms are pretty much what they sound like. You pay money to go in and destroy laptop monitors, PC
Wow.
monitors, TVs, anything they can kind of find at the thrift store, lamps. it
Damn,
was it
dude.
was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting. And you go in, you rent. I mean, you pay for a designated amount of time to go in. They give you a bunch of different stuff: sledgehammers, baseball bats. I think it was a crowbar in there, and you just kind of break stuff.
That just sounds so aggressive. But I actually had an adrenaline rush thinking about you doing that stuff. So like I'm very curious. I want to try it. So that's so interesting because you said that anger is like the unwanted emotion. It's like no,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me a bad person, right? And so like
Mm-hmm.
I can just picture a bunch of people walking around in life stuffing their anger inside and then but it lashes out. You come out in different ways and just like it just makes your life terrible because you feel like you're a bad person if you release it or express it in some way. That's just it's a cycle, right? That's what it feels
Right.
like.
Absolutely. And like you said, it can be kind of counterproductive to sometimes people feel as though that they can't, some people don't know how to channel their anger. And then
Hmm.
you got other people who repress their anger. And both are bad. Both are definitely bad. Uh um, I used to work with right now I work primarily with adults,
Hmm.
but there was a time where I used to work with children.
Okay.
And the kids, this one kid in particular comes to mind. He said that like he would get angry sometimes, and instead of, well, hi, cat,
What's your
he
cat's
would get
name?
Doja.
Ah, really? Doja Cat.
I'm not
Wow.
original at all.
Aw. And your cat does kind of look like a cow too when she
Yeah,
does
that
that.
that's where I was going. I was like, she
Yeah.
has spots like a cow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go with that. But this kid in particular, he had anger issues. Ooh, okay, all right. Cat and dog are fighting.
Mm.
Um, no, sit on the bed. Sorry. This one particular no, down. This one particular kid, he had anger issues, and he told me at one point that instead of hitting his mom or his sister, he punched a hole in his bedroom wall. Yeah. I mean, I'll take it because he's not hitting people anymore, but it was still an issue because, he has a hole in his wall.
Hmm. Hmm.
And his rationale was, well, I'm not hitting people, so what's the problem? And I'm like, well, that shouldn't be your only tool in your toolkit.
Right. Right.
Um, we have stress dolls. We have like I was really big into martial arts when I was younger. I would sometimes hit the bag or go to the bag and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Totally fine. But if you're working at your job and you can't walk away to hit something, and
Oh
that's your
darn.
only toolkit in your repertoire,
Right.
you're kind of screwed.
Hmm.
So I think that like, well, one of the things that we were talking about, because he just was kind of in that black and white thinking, either I'm angry or I'm not. And if I'm not angry, it's not a problem, but I can't be angry. And that's
Yeah.
the farthest thing from the truth.
And that's kind of like the myth, right? There's so many myths in how people are allowed to feel, and you feel kind of stuck. You're stuck in your own prison of like, I'm not allowed to feel this way because shame, bad person. And so I'll just do the complete opposite, which is not deal with any emotion. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you said, the swinging. I talk about a lot of that too with my coaching. It's like we have to learn to be in the middle. The world is
Right,
not like
right,
this
right,
and this, but when you start out, everything is looks like two categories only. So
right.
what's the gray? What's the middle? You know, like so what do you feel inside your body? What does it feel like to start to feel upset or angry? It's like cause we
Mm-hmm.
don't always want to go to a 10, but that's what you're showing, right? You honestly feel that way because that's what you have access to and what society has treated you to allow to express yourself, right? But it's so unfair to a lot of our men. It's a lot of so unfair to people who just have never been taught to express how they feel. And so, but you go to the 10 because that's when I feel like I'm allowed to finally feel because it's
Mm-hmm.
so high, it's so strong, you know?
Right. Absolutely. And unfortunately, it's just kind of like one of those things where, like you said, it's like if you had a garden hose and you're like, I don't want the water to come out at all. So I'm gonna just squeeze as tight as I can on one end and just not let anything through. Like, and then you're like, oh, well, damn, I'm thirsty now. Like, yeah, like it's gonna erupt in your face. And it's just like you, A, let it build up to that point, and B,
Mhm.
like once you restrict and constrict one emotion, like you do that with all of them.
Right.
Like you were saying
That is
earlier.
a really okay. So I hope someone clips it. We're not on Twitch. We can't get that clipped. Anyway, so I hope someone repeats that because that's exactly it. Just because you feel the anger, you're feeling other emotions too, but we just don't have the name for it yet, right? It's a
Mm,
skill. You have a
right.
vocabulary, it's a language to learn. But some people feel like, I'm a dude, I have anger and I get loud when I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough. You know, like my heart goes out to a lot of guys who cannot do that because I know how much you're hurting inside. I know you were
Yeah.
mentioning earlier. I don't know if you want to share it, but like I think it's a
Sure.
very powerful part of how it can impact someone to that degree.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I'm an open book. I'm an
Mhm.
open book. Whatever you want to ask, I'm here to answer. But um, yeah, I mean, like it's just it's so many levels to it. Like you said, like a lot of especially with men,
Mhm.
a lot of the kids I work with came from a single parent home. The dad wasn't in the picture, so that male role model of what a man is supposed to be wasn't there. They're
Yeah.
looking at like, okay, well, the guy on the corner who has all the money, he's cool, and like growing up, my hero was Sonic. I love Sonic. I have Sonic everywhere in my room, and you can't see it, but trust me, it's there. But I kind of watch those little cheesy things that the cartoons and stuff, and Sonic says at the end, and he's kind of like, "Don't do drugs" and stuff like that. That was my role model.
That's so cute.
Kids, these kids now they don't have any positive role models to say it's okay to. I was just talking to someone about this. A lot of men are like, like case in point. Today's my dad's birthday.
Mhm.
He was very affectionate with me. Happy birthday, Dad. He was very affectionate with me growing up. So like hugs and stuff like that was okay. He told me it was okay to cry. It was okay to, express yourself and stuff. Like I'm very thankful because like I see some of these kids and it's just kind of like they feel like A, they're weak if they
Mhm.
show any kind of emotion, and B, like I'm not a man. Like
Mhm.
when you think of a man, what a man's supposed to be, emotional isn't one of those things.
You mentioned so many important topics. I'm trying to like, touch all of them. So like nurturing is so important, right? And it's always going to be
Mhm.
the mental health thing of like nature, nurture. It's both. It's always going to be both. And so like
Absolutely.
when we have communities or families that nurture us, it's like the opposite of black and white. You have more in between. All that grayness comes out, right? And so like you can feel sad, you can feel disappointed, but you can also feel loved and
Mhm.
gentle and sensitive. And so like it made me think of like, we're both geeks, we're from the gaming community. I think about like where we're getting our influence from our heroes, which is why
Mhm.
so many, I think, gamers love superheroes and different characters within the games that we love, right? And so, like, it also made me think about like you said something about the kids that you're working with, the young adults. I think about like it's so funny you said that your dad was nurturing. Like I come from a very traditional Asian family and we don't really hug. We don't say I used to joke about it when I was very wounded, but like now it's just like a matter of fact. My mom has never said she's loved me. It's just not a
Mhm.
thing that traditionally we say or do. And so like, but she will cook for me.
Mhm.
I will never be hungry because that's how she shows care. Like,
Mm.
and so it's like this nurturing in a different form of like basic needs kind of thing. You have
Right.
shelter, you have food, we care for you. But we're never going to say we love you or we support you in some way. So like that
Right.
emotional wellness was never really there. So like growing up in American culture, it's always like being between two worlds. I don't know if you feel similarly. I'm sure you do in different ways, right? But the mental
Absolutely.
health aspect, it's like you're always swimming in between like, do I show up this way? Do I show up this way? So like it's kind of interesting how I'm sure it shapes individual mental wellness for sure.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, even though like in each culture has their own kind of thing, but there's a lot of overlap. I really think that there's a lot of overlap when I start talking to friends from different ethnicities and backgrounds and stuff because like it's like you guys do that too.
Yeah.
Like like to hear you say about like off camera earlier you were mentioning about mental health and how like in the Asian community they kind of handle things. It's like that with African Americans as well.
Oh,
Um
it I love how the whole thing with like grannies and aunties,
mhm.
that's the overlap right there. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that as far as like going back to my dad. It's funny how you mentioned like you show affection by your actions instead of actually
Mm.
because some people like one day I hope that we can talk about love languages, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, like everybody receives love differently.
Mhm.
And I think I know the reason why my dad is so affectionate and was so affectionate towards me growing up was because my grandfather was very he was a great man. He was a great man. He loved my grandmother and he raised a great family, but he wasn't very touchy-feely.
Mm.
He worked in a facility called Bethlehem Steel up until they closed. Um, it's a steel mill in the name, but he worked multiple jobs. He made sure that because I believe, well, I have about it's seven of them, not including my dad. It's seven kids that my grandparents had.
Mm.
And a seven kid family, like you need income. So he had
Mhm.
multiple jobs. He was always working. He wasn't very touchy feely. As a matter of fact, not to get too off topic, my dad, when he was teaching me how to ride my bike, and I'm gonna ask him afterwards if he remembers this story, but he was teaching me how to ride my bike, and he was telling me how he learned how to ride a bike, and he was explaining that his dad, he kind of had to do it on his own. And like one day he was, actually riding without training wheels one day, and his sister jumped in front of him. My aunt jumped in front of him and like just kind of danced in front of him. He was like trying to get out the way and everything, and he fell. And my grandfather came over there, rolled his newspaper up and everything, stood right over him and was like, "It's just like riding a car. You're gonna cause more damage by trying to move out the way. You just hit it straight on
That's good.
and walked away. He didn't ask if he was okay.
No, it's
Just
practical. Practical.
yeah, so like he like towards the end of his life, he towards the end of his life, he they got a better relationship. They spent time together, and I think he actually said he loved him a few times. Like it was just kind of like one of those things where you should know I love you because the lights are on. You should know that I love you because there's food on the table. Some people need to hear it. And my grandfather
Yep.
wasn't like that.
Mhm.
And so in turn, he was like, I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to help
Mm.
you apply for colleges. I'm going to help you with prom. Like all of the stuff his dad didn't do, he did with me.
Mm.
So,
I just everything you say, I just want to touch everything, but I can't. It's just okay. So when you said that whole of like your dad rewriting the narrative of
mhm.
your legacy, right? It's changing the whole story of your family. It takes so much self-compassion to do that, self-awareness. People who don't feel that bitter instead of like, well, this is my responsibility now, right? And I know there's a
Right.
wounding involved. So it's always this concept of and it's a duality, right? Instead of black and white, it's both. And so this is, I'm hoping people who watch and listen were just reminders of little things that we can help you practice. I practice it too. It's not like, I'm not doing this too. So it's like, even though the wounding is there and this is your experience, you have the gift of time now to do something different. It truly is a gift, but sometimes when you're that wounded, you do need help, right? And
Right.
so it's wonderful that your dad can be that strong and gentle at the
Oh,
same time to
stop.
do the things that he didn't have. It really is something that he can model for you, has modeled for you. And then again, it's the whole thing about like I think about timelines and family legacies and stuff like that. I feel
Hmm.
like at a certain time in your life, when you've had the wounding, if enough time has passed where you can have that, self pity, self compassion, growing a little bit, there's a space for you to make a decision, right? Do I want to keep it going this way, or am I finally ready to change the family story? It's not just
Right.
you, you're changing your whole family's story right now. So, like, when you are called to do it, so I do the hero's journey stuff. Like, when you're called to adventure, are you gonna do it or not? And if you
Right.
don't
Right.
get
Right.
called,
Right.
if you don't answer the call, it will come back to you sooner or later. So like, don't worry about it and missing it. When the time is right, you'll get another message.
Right.
Sooner or later you'll do it. That's what I'm hoping.
Right. Absolutely. And maybe that's another topic. Like I'm just like you. Everything that we're saying is just kind of like lighting up in my head. I'm like, we can go that way, we can
Yay.
talk this way. But just trying to keep things together. Going off of what you said, as far as like one of the big things that I really am like I talk about passionately when it comes to the individuals I work with is generational curses.
Yes.
Like you were just talking about, as far as like,
Mhm.
having something that happened in the family or something along the lines of something traumatic, because trauma can be passed down through generations. Um, can cause a slew of different issues and stuff. Mental health is one of those things. I was sharing off camera with you about in my own personal life. Again, African American family, grew up Christian. I do believe in a lot of the things that I was taught, but I think that sometimes with minorities, more specifically African Americans, like we will pray about something instead of like,
Yes.
like actually going out to get help. And another big person that I really like, and I named my dog after him, is Prince. I'm a huge Prince fan. So I have Doja and Prince. I don't know how that happened, but that's the thing now. But I'm bringing up him to say that like I was really messed up when I found out how he passed. He actually passed due to an opioid
Oh
overdose.
no. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm bringing him up is because growing up he wore some pretty weird stuff, and he would wear heels a lot and dance on stage and stuff. Later in life, he had issues with his hips and everything, and he later converted to he what did he convert to? I think he was a Jehovah's Witness towards the end of his life. And a little bit about them, they don't believe in blood transfusions.
Oh, really?
Hmm. So
Wow.
he could have gotten like a procedure to get it done, but it would require a blood transfusion because of the amount of blood that he was going to lose. He didn't do it. So he then, spoke with doctors and different things like that and started using pain medicine. I'm not a psychic, but sometimes when it comes to that thing with religion, I think there's a place for it. You do have to have a belief in something, but sometimes we will be like, okay, well, I'm not going to get the help I need. I'll just pray about it, and it just kind of makes things worse. I say all that to say that was kind of similar to what happened with my uncle. My uncle actually for years had mental health concerns. My great grandmother knew and was just kind of like, oh, well, let's just pray about it. Um, about 10 years ago, he moved to California, and we got news that he passed. So let's just say that everything happened within a week. And Monday, we found out he passed. By like Wednesday or Thursday, we got more details. We got more details about how he passed. And it came out in the wash that he actually jumped off of an overpass onto oncoming traffic. Like again, I'm not a psychic, but had he got the appropriate help that he needed, you know, maybe that could have been prevented. So mental health is one of those things that we just kind of sweep under the rug. We don't really talk about it. Um, only weird people have those things, and
Mhm.
people think that mental health is just strictly hearing and seeing auditory hallucinations and stuff, and it's not.
Mm.
It's anxiety, it's depression, it's PTSD, all of those things, and we just don't talk about it.
That's something I think we can cover over time too, is like the more myths of what mental health actually looks like. It's just more of like you said earlier again, a checkup thing.
Hmm.
Everyone's stressed out right now. It's kind of just a normal thing to feel and do. And one thing I really wish we could have done in the schools is like teach relationship skills,
Hmm.
mental wellness of just like what does it feel like to be upset? How do you talk about conflict? Because really, in this world, it's relational. If you don't
Hmm.
have a good breakup, are you gonna like drink yourself to a stupor and just like cry yourself to sleep? Like, that's what people celebrate on videos and film and our celebrities that we follow. The more weird they are, the more unhealthy they are, the more celebrated and screen time they get. And so, like, it's just backwards everything like you
Right.
mentioned earlier with like the people that we look up to. Sonic didn't do that. He's not going to drink himself to sleep if he had a bad breakup, like we're just looking at the wrong things, but like it's the algorithm. It's
Right.
money, right? And so like our communities are struggling because of that stuff too. And so it perpetuates so much mental illness instead of mental wellness. It's so sad.
Absolutely. In the neighborhood that I work in, it's not the best neighborhood, and I'll get into that. I feel like we need another episode to talk about where I work. But there's a boys and girls club not that far from where I actually work, and we were trying to like collaborate and do different things and stuff. You would be surprised in the year 20, well, it's 2024 now. I keep saying 23. You'd be surprised like how in the year 2024, I gotta write this down. Um, how many homes don't have like a lot of the things you're talking about, resources, internet, like basic
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's not that a lot of these people don't want the help. Like, who wants to
Right.
feel this way?
Yes.
It's more so about them not knowing the resources or who to go to and what to talk about and stuff, or even how to ask for help.
Okay, so I'm gonna go on this pathway because it's really big for me. I used to be a school counselor, and it's like my biggest passion ever. If I could go back to a different timeline and different life, I would do that for the rest of my life. So, like, I used to work in what you call Title One school. So, Title
Okay.
One is like lower income; they get funding from the state. And most of that neighborhood that I worked in were Vietnamese
Hmm.
or Hispanic. And so it was a lot of family generationally from the Vietnam War. And so they have
Ooh.
a history of not trusting the police, not trusting outside
Hmm.
agencies. And so you'd see them come into the school. They would kind of like not sure what to do. They didn't trust administrators. And most of the teachers, so like this is going to be a race thing. A lot of the teachers were white and they came in to finish their schooling and they would get a grant or some like reimbursement from their student loan if they worked in low income neighborhoods. So there
Right.
was this cultural incompatibility. They were all from, middle income, higher areas,
Hmm.
or they didn't understand the culture of the students they're working with. And so like a lot of the teachers, I'm not bashing teachers, but sometimes come in with like the savior complex instead of understanding the communities that they're working with. So you can feel that. And then sometimes the parents come in like, I don't want to get outed. I don't want to get punished for being a bad parent because there's this authority,
Hmm.
perception of authority in schools. And so like, well, I will honor anything that the teacher or administration says about my students or my child. If they say my child is a problem, then I'm going to treat them like a problem too, instead of understanding what the actual problem is. And so it's a big mess. It really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it again, overlap. Like you're in a whole nother time zone, but like I still come across some of the same issues. I work in the inner city. Majority of the people I work with are black, some Hispanic, and some Caucasian, but primarily black.
Yeah.
And um everything that you hit on is spot on. Like we have the same kind of issues and disconnect with the authority figures and stuff in our neighborhoods
Yes.
because they're getting these cops and different people from, again, like I'm not knocking anybody wants to be a cop, that's a very, very hard job, but they're getting these people who are not even from the area, like you're saying, and they just kind of don't understand the dynamic of where we are. They don't
Hmm.
understand how, like, case in point, in the UK, to have a firearm, you have to be a special kind of cop.
Oh.
Yeah. Like not all
Hmm.
cops in the UK carry firearms. I know that the United States is very different with their gun culture, but
Hmm.
very, very different. But uh, like a lot of times people are afraid of their life that are afraid of losing their lives, so like they kind of shoot first and ask questions later. A
Yes.
lot of the kids, a lot of the kids, I hear all kinds of horror stories about their encounters with the police and different things, and it's just kind of like you said, that disconnect of kind of like I'm supposed to ask you for help, but I'm scared because
Yes.
you're kind of intimidating. It's like that with the teachers as well up here.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of disconnect when it comes to that kind of stuff, especially even in the helping field. Um, I work pretty close with this organization called Healthcare for the Homeless, and a lot of the new people that are coming in, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed college students, who read something out of a book and they're like, I can save the world. And
That's cute. Very cute. Just gonna say that's cute. Anyways.
you
Mhm.
know where I'm going with this. So, it's just kind of like you said, like it's not that their intentions are bad. I
Mhm.
don't think anybody, oh, no, I'm not going to say that. There are some people who have bad intentions, but it's just more so that they don't. I think if they spent a little bit more time trying to understand versus being like, I have a degree and I know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about because I read it from a
Yes.
book,
Yes.
you get what I mean.
Yes.
It's the same things. And like that can push people away. That'll push people
Hmm.
away from wanting to seek services and help and stuff.
Yes. So one thing I think I want to kind of touch on is like, so the difference in what a school serves as in the community of different cultures that you are working with are part of. So like the I don't know what to call it, poor community. So like if
Hmm.
we're a lower income neighborhood, we're not looking for resources because we don't have time. Parents are working two, three jobs.
Hmm.
And like you said, with resources, right? A lot of the kids I worked with, they didn't have books. I would just give them my books, like, don't worry about it. Like, I'll just get reimbursement for something. Like, you can't even read. These kids don't have
Right.
books. How are you going to expect them to learn how to read if they don't have time to go to the library and get books? And so, like, that's just one example. But, like, I was thinking about how, you know, the school serves as a community center, just like how church serves as a community center. If
Hmm.
that's where people are congregating, then you use that as a way to give people more education and resources. But people who have more access to these organizations don't see it that way, so they can't think about it in that perspective. And so,
Right.
like, if we could just shift that, it's like it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. If this is
Right.
where parents are dropping off their kids anyways, so what I used to do with one of my principals, our kids would be losing their teeth at 5 years old. You'd have kinders coming in, they would have the
Mm.
worst dental care. And so, like, what we had the parents do, if they're going to sign up their kids for kindergarten, we made them take a seminar, 30 minutes. That's it, 30 minutes in different languages. All these nurses and all these dentists came in. They would have their time from the community. So, like, if you had access to see who the dentists were, you're more likely to sign up and go to the dentist.
Right.
And so
Right.
they would have
Right.
these
Right.
things and show the parents, this is how you brush your teeth properly. This is what it looks like when your teeth are starting to rot. This is what sugar does. And so, like, this is just, again, realistic access to resources and not shaming community. Because, like, hey, you got to drop your kid off. Look at this. We have some dentists here. Can you just
Hmm.
spend like 15 minutes, 5 minutes? That's all we're asking. And then you can drop your kid off to kindergarten, like, so
Right.
it's just shifting perspective of like, it's not fancy. It's not something you can do like every, therapy session, $200. Like, no, mental health is community wellness. It's not
Hmm.
just the brain. It's not just the mind. It's more than that. You have to think differently when you're serving your community.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that. I swear, every time you say something, like my brain is like, ah. But it's funny that you mention this stuff. We were talking about risk factors and protective factors at work yesterday.
Hmm. Nice.
And one of the things that kept coming up, and someone asked, like, why would poverty be a thing that would cause all these other issues and stuff?
My
And it's
head
like,
hurts. Sorry. Hey, okay. Yes. All right.
I know,
Good
I know.
question. Good question.
There are no dumb questions. There are no dumb
Yeah.
questions. But it's just kind of like you said, like it's not that we're asking for more, we're asking for the same. There should be no reason. I mean, a lot of times now, I think kids, they don't even have workbooks anymore. Like I think everything's print out. A lot of the kids that I work with said that they get printouts now. They don't even
Mhm.
have textbooks.
Yeah.
But when they did, these books were back from like when Ronald Reagan was in office.
Yeah. See how old they were?
Yeah, like stuff changed. Just in like a couple of years back, Pluto was a planet. Now it's a planetoid. Now it's not. I don't even remember what it is right now. But stuff changes, and they're using books from like the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that. And you're expecting them to keep up with everybody else.
Yeah.
That's asinine. And it just kind of goes to show you that, like you said, like you're saying, like as far as like areas where people congregate, churches, after school programs, like the Girls and Boys Club, why not put somebody down there and be like, hey, just a couple of minutes of your time. If you are interested in a seminar class, no, it's free of charge.
Mhm.
People will, I guarantee you, people will stop.
Right.
Because it's right there. I actually, I got a funny little story about that. Like, and it just kind of piggybacks off what we were talking about. When I was actually in college still, one of my internships, I went with the program I was working with to a middle school.
Mm.
And um, we talked about not just drugs, but pretty much everything under the sun. We talked about sex, we talked about just different life stuff. And we had this one little thing this activity that we did where we put like if you didn't want to ask your question out loud, you can write it on a piece of paper and then put it in the hat, and then like me or one of the other individuals will read it and just kind of ask the class. We'll give them a chance to answer the question, and if nobody knew how to answer it, we would. And one of the questions was, now mind you, this is a middle school, so like I think the oldest kid was probably 13, 14, and it was a room full of like maybe 30 kids.
Mm.
This is going to make sense later, but I'm putting it this way. So I pull the question out the hat. The question is, how do you know if a person has a STD? And I'm like,
Mm.
okay, well, if you guys want me to answer, I will, but like, is there anyone in the classroom that wants to try to answer? And this one kid, full confidence, raises his hand. He's like, bam. All right. So if you want to know if a girl has an STD, what you want to do is you get some earwax and then you put it up there. And if she jumps, she has an STD. And no, my face, I was like, what? And it's not like I'm talking to a room full of kids that aren't sexually active. These kids are sexually active and they believe that this is the gospel. This is the truth. And another kid, like again, it was like 30 kids in there. I want to say at least 15 of them raised their hand and was like, yep, my cousin told me, my older brother told me,
Oh my
this
gosh.
person told me. Like, it just goes back to what you're saying. Like, they don't know. They don't have the resources. They don't have sex ed. They don't have a lot of these different things to kind of help them. It's not that they don't have the inability to ask for help. They don't
Mhm.
have the resources.
But certain things get perpetuated and shared because that's related to the topic. And so it becomes like, what do you call these? Like urban things,
Mm-hmm.
like urban
Urban
myth,
legends. Yeah.
yes. And so like, that's what I heard. So I'm going to do that too. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's,
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. He thought that was how you test for STDs apparently, and it's just kind of like one of those things where like this kid who's actually sexually active is telling somebody who doesn't have a dad around, who doesn't have somebody they can confine in and
yeah,
ask about these kind of things, what's sex about, and they don't know. So like they're just kind of making the best of what they got, and that's how stuff
exactly.
like that starts.
And you're talking
So,
about like the influence of peer communities, right?
mm-hmm,
Because we don't have the trust or access. It's like certain agencies become like, we don't help if you don't come to us. Outreach is so big. Outreach is the most important things. Like I used to talk to therapists about like what they can do to help. If they're charging so much per session, if they're making X amount of money, you could give back by making a video. You can give
Mm-hmm.
back by posting a resource or a book that you think is beneficial. You don't stop helping. You took an oath, and I like will honor that till the day I die. Like if you start making more money and you don't have to like scrimp and save anymore, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget all the volunteer work that you did, the communities of color that you got your intern hours from.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you needed the extra money or like the free hours or whatever it was for your license, always give back. Always remember where you come from. Like that's the thing that we always have to do forever. Like it keeps you humble. It keeps you remembering where the mental wellness is impacting communities or not. Like all this stuff is like it trickles and helps each other. Cause like I think about like education and mental wellness. If you live in a society where everyone's educated, don't you feel better that way? Like if you live in a society where everyone has better mental wellness, don't you feel better about that too? Like it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
just belong to one community and you keep it and you like save it and like protect it from like that's just the weirdest mindset for me that when people hide resources from each other.
Absolutely. And it's like you guys should care because the next generation behind us is the one that's going to be taking care of us.
Yes. Yes.
So you might want to see if like, you can help them as much as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Because these kids is again, it's not that these there was this one individual I used to talk to, and of course he was a problem child, and he kept getting put out of class, and people were at their wits end to try to help this kid and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and he was just like not with any of it. And he finally came my way, and we started talking and everything, and he was like, I honestly can tell you, like, I do not like being sober. It's cool that we come to this program, you feed us and everything. Um, I gotta show you pictures later. Like I took them fishing, and
Nice.
like these kids were like, some of them were in placement, some of them had felony, I mean, charges and stuff. Like they were outwardly adults, but like they were like, ew, it's a worm. Could you put it on the hook, Mr. Sean? So like I gotta show you pictures later. But he was like, it's cool that we do all these different activities, but that's not my reality. My reality is going back
Right.
home to this place. His mom was making, I don't know if they have like squeegee boys where you are, but pretty much they stand on the street corners and stuff at red
Huh.
lights, and yeah.
Okay.
So like he's paying rent. He's 13 years old, paying his mom rent. And
Mm.
that's his reality. He's
Right.
like seeing all this stuff. One kid told me that like on Halloween night something happened and like his friend got shot, and like he said he got brain matter on his face, and he held him in his arms until he died. That's their reality. Like that's the stuff they see day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I don't like being sober. I don't like dealing with that stuff. Everybody thinks they're ready to cast this person out as a problem case and stuff, and it's like, no, like he's that's saying something that like he's in his own way asking for help.
Yes.
And you're just
Yes.
so preoccupied with just kind of seeing surface level stuff that you're ignoring this cry for help. And it's just
Huh.
kind of, it just makes you wonder how
Yes.
some people can just kind of go home and just cast somebody totally to the side and not
Mm-hmm.
care.
Yes. So again, so many things I want to touch. My brain's going crazy right now. Like, okay. So, one of the things is about like, so I criticize the DSM all the time. I talk about how like it's a deficit-based model of mental wellness psychology, and it's
Mhm.
very colonialist. And so, like, because of that, we're seeing people as there's always something wrong with you, something to fix. Complete opposite. You will
Mhm.
only be worthy of love and contributing member of society if you do XYZ, right? Which means don't have any mental health concerns. But that's not the reality for everybody. Most everybody has something going on. But because of the way that psychology has kind of like permeated certain definitions, very incorrect definitions of how healthy people should look like,
Mhm.
everyone's walking around feeling like they're broken and wronged in some way. So like the harm reduction model is probably the way we should be doing things, but people feel ashamed. It's like, well, I need to cope. Like you do need to cope. Getting rid of something that you need to cope in a world where your life is dramatically unsafe, different, constantly attacking your psyche, I understand why you would need to cope. Like there's a reason. And we need compassion to understand that. Like in an ideal world, we would have people, yeah, sooner or later down the road, you would never have to use your substance, whatever it is. But we don't live in an ideal world. We live
Mm-hmm.
in worlds where young people grow up too fast. We live in
Mm-hmm.
worlds where young people have to start working and fending for their families and their livelihoods when they should be children. And so, like, you expect a kid who had to grow up so fast not to cope in some way, and they didn't get the life skills that they needed in a gradual way like other people who have stability and privilege get to have. And so like it is different for everybody. And that's something that is important to talk about because there are some mental healthers who I'm going to say they come in with like a very biased perspective of the client in the room, right? You
Mm-hmm.
come in thinking, let me fix you. I'm the authority. I'm better than you in some way. But you know that's never going to work. Like we said with the school system, with police, with all that stuff, it comes down to meeting people where they're at, right? It's like, okay,
Absolutely.
so how much healing can we realistically do? Because like again, a lot of people, like you said, bushy-eyed people come in wanting to save the world. When you get your feet wet, when you get thrown into the shark-infested waters, you realize you're not saving the world.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing what you can, one person at a time. You're going to come home and cry once in a while because life is hard.
Right.
You're kind of absorbing everyone's trauma, and you have to like pick yourself up at the end of the day and be like, I'm doing this again tomorrow, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
like it's hard work, and so we do have to have these collaborative conversations. Your kitty's so cute. And like so when we do this stuff, but the reality is like we are not better than anyone, we just have come far along a little bit more so we can pull people with us. That's all we're
Absolutely.
doing. When we come with that perspective, people feel respected. It's like I'm a companion along your journey. I'm not better than you. I might come out, my anti version of myself might come out once in a while, but you're doing your work at your pace where you're at. I've been there too. I've fallen apart. I've had really bad years. And so like I am no better than you doing this
Absolutely.
work. Right. And that's all we can do.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Um, you mentioned harm reduction. I I'm like I mentioned before, I used to work in methadone maintenance. Um, you're absolutely right. Like everybody has this idea of what should be, like you said, on paper. Ideally, nobody wants to be on drugs.
Yeah,
If
of
they could just go to
course.
bed one day and then wake up, excuse me, wake up and never have to worry about drugs ever again, they'd be happy.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not in a perfect world. That's not a thing. They have all these different modalities of how to treat people and stuff like that. Not bashing NA or AA. I use a lot of their stuff, but in their eyes, programs like methadone maintenance and Suboxone, you are not technically clean. They
Oh.
they come from a framework of total abstinence. You can't use something like that because it's a crutch. And it's just kind of like, well, you know, that's a whole nother topic for another day. I can go down that rabbit hole about how opiates and stuff are different, but uh, it's not something that they're getting off of the street. They're getting this from a medical professional. Not everybody's modality as far as treatment is for every like, and treatment should be individualized. And a lot of times stuff like that chases people away. It's like, why come talk to you about my mental health or my drug problem if you're gonna chastise me or judge me? I
Right?
remember, yeah, I remember
Yep.
being in a waiting room one day in triage with someone, and I could hear nurses just a earshot away saying like, "Oh, this person's back here. They're just drug seeking. Look at this chart." Making it a conversation piece. It's just like the people that we're supposed to ask for help. I don't want to go to you because I feel like I'm being judged. Um, and it's just it really pushes people away. And this whole, I think honestly, our whole framework of how we handle addiction and mental health has been wrong for years. Um, Case in point, last time I checked, I got to look at the numbers now, but Spain has decriminalized all drugs.
Really?
Guess how much crime dropped by? 50%.
That's wild.
50% of all crime drop in Spain because they decriminalized. And it's not saying that they're condoning them using drugs.
Mhm.
It's just that they're not thrown straight into jail and like sitting there and not getting any kind of help. They
It's the
allow these people,
reasoning, right?
right? They give them access to services. They give them
Mm.
access to programs and different things like that. Like it's just kind of like you can see visually how receptive people are to treatment and different things like that if they're treated like a human being.
Yes. Can you imagine?
Right.
Wowie.
It's just
Hmm.
crazy. But
It
yeah, I
is.
mean like it's just kind of one of those things that like we've been just kind of attacking this thing totally wrong for years.
Yes. Yeah. A side note, actually, I've been trying to think about like having social workers, mental health professionals, and mental health advocates be consultants for policymakers and
Mm.
politicians because we need to talk about community impact. How does it affect our community? And then how does that relate back to whatever numbers they're looking at, like financially or the rubric that they need for to show that something's successful? That's just a side note. Anyway, so like, are you an ADHDer? Like me? Like,
I've never been diagnosed. I don't
okay. Just saying. Okay.
I'm all over the place.
No, you just have these ideas of novelty like I do. Like when someone's talking and then like it makes new connections, you're like, oh, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
We can talk
that's
about that
kind of
later.
okay. But yeah, I think that like even though like I said before, like with me being in substance abuse, that's my track. Like there's a lot of overpass with this stuff, and like a lot of people that I work with they are co-occurring. They have a lot of different
Yeah.
things going on, not just the substance abuse piece. And it's just kind of like we can't help somebody if I can talk to you about drugs all day, every day. But if you're not getting, like the reality is like I've worked with people who had schizophrenia. I've worked
Mm,
with people who had bipolar mood disorder. Like, oh, that's a whole thing, mood disorder. I mean, personality disorders and stuff. But like I've had like different people who came into my across my path that were undiagnosed with a bunch of different things. And sometimes they weren't even properly diagnosed, like you were saying earlier with the DSM.
mhm.
Like they have all these different concerns and they just want things to stop. They want to be normal. And it's like I want to help you, but like you need a little bit more help than I can provide. You need a
Yes.
community, like you were saying, like you need
Yes.
a network, like legislation and stuff like that needs to be changed because of how the laws are when it comes to arresting certain individuals and stuff and decriminalizing certain drugs and things. Like we just need to kind of come together and just figure out how we're going to help because how we've been doing things for so long is not working.
Mm-mm.
We're just kind of like putting people in a cycle, a never-ending cycle of,
Right.
drama and stuff. And like the best way
Hmm.
to help somebody is to realize that yeah, an individual who might be going through it with addiction or mental health and stuff like that. They're going to do what their diagnosis says.
Yeah.
But as far as like us as practitioners and individuals who want to help and stuff like that, we have to accommodate them and make sure that, you know, we, like you mentioned earlier, meeting people where they are. I remember one time when I was in college and there was a story about how this lady worked with this individual who kept huffing paint. He went from counselor to counselor to counselor, and he finally got to this lady's office and was like, "Look, I'm not trying to hear anything you saying. I just don't want to get arrested by the police anymore." And then she was like, "Well, you ever think about huffing paint on your back porch?" And he was like, "Wow, I didn't think of it that way." Eventually, they got to the point where he wasn't doing it at all, but she met him where he was.
Hmm.
She
Hmm.
met him where he was, and he was able to kind of eventually get to a point where he wasn't doing anything at all. But like she didn't come in with, I know what's best because I'm a
Hmm.
practitioner and shut up and listen.
Right. Right.
So yeah.
And that's like the funnest part where you have the light bulb go off when your client is like, wait. You're not pushing me because that's resistance, right? Motivational
Mm-hmm.
interviewing 101. When your
Absolutely.
client's resistant, you're pushing for resistance. So what are you doing? You roll with it, right? You go with it. And so like the funniest thing is like when the client who's been through X number of professionals who didn't get it because they're having their high horse or whatever it is, and finally someone just lets them keep on going. You're like, they get like confused. It's like, I'm not gonna push for a reaction from you. I'm not gonna like, this is the thing too, like when people have like, so I work with very high, highly sensitive people, and a lot of them are autistic ADHDers.
Okay.
So you have like autistic meltdown or tantrum, right? Or something happens. So if you push some autistic person to do something when they're not ready, it's like a threat to safety, stuff like that. And so like they could have the meltdown or their body goes into fight or flight, which is trauma, which is a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people who are struggling. So it can go with any type of person that you're seeing in the space. And so like if you just back off when they feel unsafe, they're receptive. Like this person's not trying to control me. This person's not trying to tell me what to do when I already feel unsafe. I'm actually curious now. Why are they not? What makes them different? They start might leaning more towards you, and you use their body language changes. And so all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff can happen when you see people as a human being, right? Unique
Right.
circumstance.
Right. Absolutely. Um, have you, I mean, we can talk about this another day, but have you ever heard of the rat park experiments?
Yes.
Okay. So you know about
We
how that
could
stuff
we could
works.
talk about that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need a whole
We'll
probably
have all these
episode.
articles and videos and we can just watch them and like commentate on them on Twitch.
Right.
You want to do on Twitch? Because that's what I was
Okay.
thinking about doing. Okay, cool. So I think this is a good place to wrap up. Do you have any final notes that you kind of want to repeat or something you want to say to wrap up?
Just quick bullet points. Mental health. Everybody has issues with their mental health to some capacity. It is not just seeing little green men and talking to yourself and stuff like that. It can be anxiety, it can be depression, it could be PTSD. All of those things fall under that branch. It's not until people actually start to realize, I think both from a mental health perspective and the substance abuse perspective, we're kind of seeing that there's a bridge. Better late than never, but um, it's both needed. It's both we need individuals such as yourself as well as substance abuse counselors. Like everything's kind of needed because everybody's unique. Everybody's their own kind of snowflake, and we have to individualize treatment and meet people where they are. And I look forward to doing this more. This was actually pretty fun.
It's fun, right? Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
fun. I love doing this. So like I will also repeat certain things like it's interdisciplinary. It has always been, but because of like me being an academic, I've seen these hierarchies and like people having their noses up in the air saying we're too good for certain things. So we keep the knowledge and the academic papers within our own spaces. And for me, I'm all about open access information and freely distributing things so people can feel empowered and learn about what the people up there in the ivory tower of education are learning themselves. Because again, you can't just be theoretical. We have to apply this stuff, right? And so
Right.
the only way to see what actually is working is to see who's actually doing the work, which is you, which is me, which is like other people who are our colleagues, just in different boxes of helping. But at the
Right.
same time, it's all connected, which is really exciting to see.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for participating. And I
Thank you for
already
having
know
me.
we're gonna geek out. And I know when we share in the Discord that I'm hoping people will start commenting and having questions. And that's where we're gonna be start building like more of like discourse and really helping our community because that's the only way to do it. Like we have our small community to help. And so
Mhm.
like we can do what we can in this little pocket of the world for us.
Absolutely. I'm with it. Like this is really fun actually.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun. So we could just start geeking out about like I saw this article, I saw this video, let's talk about that. Like, and so like even when we start doing like I'm already saying you're doing it with me. So like we're doing like Twitch streams and stuff. I bet we could also have articles and teaching people like self-regulation. What's the difference between this drug and how does it affect the brain and the body? All these things can be collective and like the videos will be there forever for people to just look back on. It's like I forgot that stream, I didn't see it. I want to go back and see so I can learn. That's what it's there
Right.
for. Like we said with community resources, some people don't know where to go. So if we have it available, then they have something at least to touch, you know.
I'm cool with it. And like you said, the internet's forever. So like
Hmm.
if anyone misses an episode, they can go back and watch, stuff that's archived. And
Yes.
I think that would be pretty cool.
Hmm.
Stuff like
No.
this is like it's needed because like you said earlier, like it's just kind of a lot of times people don't like feeling the way that they do. And they don't know how to, get the help that they need. And if just from watching one of these videos, it inspires someone to go talk to someone or actually seek professional help. Because I hate when people Google, like ah, they will Google, they'll Google diagnose themselves and just So even with us, the stuff we're talking about and everything, please for the individuals watching, fact check us. Like actually go talk to a professional and let
Mhm.
them do their thing and stuff. And instead of like looking for it for yourself, because I promise you, if you go through the DSM and you just open any random page in there and put your finger on it, you like, man, I might have that.
Mhm.
You need to go
Yep.
to a professional so that way they can observe it over a longitudinal period of time and go from there. But
Yeah, we have everything under the sun.
but yeah, it's just one of those things that like is needed. Like it can kind of push people in a way that might have never even considered. It might give somebody that little push to be like, okay, well, let me actually go talk to someone.
Hmm.
So
Right. So let us help you build those baby steps to get there. And I'm always about like consumer on the consumer side of like what does an ethical therapist look like, what kind of questions are you supposed to ask, what does the first session look like, so we can always talk about that too, like in terms of like substance abuse treatment. Like I'm always curious, I have no idea what that looks like. I would love to ask you about that later on too. So again, we're gonna keep on saying next time, so like we're gonna wrap up now. If anyone reached this part of the video, thank you so much for watching. I would really appreciate if you could share the content because this is how we help community. If you have questions in the comments, please share. And if anything you related to, please also comment about that stuff because it helps with the algorithm. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care.